Hello.
Nice to meet you, Irina.
Very nice to meet you. Zoom meet you, or whatever it calls nowadays.
Good afternoon. So, yes.
Your internet is a bit choppy, I think. One sec.
I can hear you perfectly. Can you hear me?
Yeah, right now I can, yes.
I just asked you, where is your husband?
My husband will come here in like 10 minutes. He's still on an important call.
Got you. So where are you actually? You're in New York City, in Manhattan?
I'm right now right outside of New York in Long Island for a month. But usually in Manhattan, yeah. And you?
Good. So you're a Brooklyn. How long have you lived there?
In the city, 20 years. 20 years.
Yeah.
I'm a New Yorker.
But you were born in Moscow.
Yes, very much so. And my parents are still in Moscow, actually. So I moved here.
And your husband is Russian too?
No, he's actually Dutch.
He's Dutch?
Yeah.
Verdomme, gosh. Yeah. So I just spent the afternoon speaking to a Dutchman in Utrecht, which is a nice thing. Anyway, how? Tell me what you've done in the last 20 years in New York, and how you came to be interested in this space idea.
Yeah. Well, first when I came, I went to grad school. And I come from a design background originally, so I do scenography, sets and costumes, and that's where I started, and then moved to visual dramaturgy and visual directing, and I teach playwrights and directors how to think visually and write and direct from visual point of view. So that's my quick career, and I design a lot, and I work with a lot of playwrights, helping them to write scripts, and work with a lot of directors, and also write and direct myself. And that actually happened. American theater, I don't know how it's in London actually, and I've done projects in London, but not much. Everything is very fit into boxes, people have their roles, and it's very hard to break out of the role in terms of collaboration, and that is, at least where I came from, it was quite different in Moscow. There was more collaborative nature of theater making. So that was the reason why I started teaching and creating a lot of workshops for people with all different backgrounds, including stage managers and actors and so on. How to approach a character from visual point of view, how to write, how to manage a project, and so on. And so that's where the idea of bringing people in a way together from different backgrounds and help them understand one another and create something together started to emerge. And so slowly moved into directing and creating and co-directing and so on, but mostly from design-driven theater, a lot of visual-driven theater. And right now I'm starting a company, a non-profit company, which will explore the binaries in many ways and oppositions, and see if we can target those from performance, from education, and from social work. But in general, being Russian in America, the idea of binaries, oppositions, and people not being able to have a generative dialogue has always been a challenge for me. So that's where Space Bridge in many ways started. And of course now looking...
Sorry, I was just going to say, you mentioned the acrimonious Citizen Summit. Which one are you referring to? Is that the capital to capital one, or which one were you thinking of?
Well, there were many. The one between Leningrad and Seattle. That was the one which was quite aggressive in many ways. Have you looked at that?
Is it the one where the woman said we don't have sex in Russia?
No, I think it was the one before where the fisherman said, "Why are you telling me about my life? It feels like you know everything about my life better than I do. And I came here to speak to you, but yet you're telling me what's going on." And there was also an interesting, there was, it is where they were talking, Americans were talking about democracy, and we're talking that right now outside of the walls where we are, there is a protest for Russia, and there are like children protesting and so on. So that's, but the thing is, there were so many questions, and the way people talk to one another is very familiar to me. I feel like the same conversation is happening now, and the same questions are asked, and there is very little answers, and there is very little interest in what other people think. So that's where Space Bridge came, and that's how I came to the idea of starting a company and having this project as as the first performance child. I'm developing some others, and yeah.
Well, there's several areas that I want to talk to you about. First of all, you know probably the history of Peace Child then. I mean, we started in 1980, so we've been around for a long, long time. And we were involved. We lived in Washington, in fact, from 1982 to 1989. So, yes, I do know America very well, and we lived in New York for part of that time, and San Francisco and Santa Barbara, Minneapolis, but most of the time in Washington, D.C. So that's why we retain strong interest in the States, even though we've now been in Europe since 1989. I used to go back there 2 or 3 times a year. But the link with Moscow was very strong through the 1980s. We did Peace Child in Moscow in 1985 and 1986, when you probably weren't born in the arena.
Oh, I was very much born then. That's why Samantha is so close. We were pretty much the same age.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But you're right. Samantha Smith has pretty much disappeared from the radar of Americans now, and her foundation has been wound up. But, what back then was extraordinarily complicated. It took days sometimes to book a phone call from the United States to Moscow. Now we're doing it, daily. I speak to Moscow, pretty much every week. And you probably know my colleague there, Stan, the rock star from Flowers Group, who runs the Green Theatre, the Stan Theatre in Gorky Park. And they're actually doing a Peace Child when this theatre comes back to life, which of course is the context for a lot of the problems that we're facing now, that actually you can't do theatre. It's been impossible to socially distance on stage, so that's very, very difficult. But I think the wider issue is that at least back in the 1980s, Vladimir Posner and Phil Donahue and Kim Spencer and Evelyn Messenger and ourselves and Joseph Goldin, who you mentioned, we were really celebrating and having a rich dialogue, which today we're really not. There's deep suspicion and hostility about Russians. Even here in the UK, we have hundreds, thousands of rich Russian emigres, and my nephew is at a famous English public school. A lot of his friends are Russians because Russians seem to like to send their kids to famous British schools.
Some of them.
So on one level,
Some of them.
on one level, we are very close, but the fact is, as I told you, we're very worried about the fact that neither of our governments, neither the US nor the Russian government, seem to have any appetite to renegotiate nuclear arms limitations treaties, and the lack of collaboration is it's appalling. And we face an even worse situation with China, where it's an outright hostile trade war and war of words, and you have to feel that there is a battle between good and evil going on here, which the good guys show every sign of losing. It's a desperate situation. The power has shifted massively.
Mm-hmm.
You can remain for that, but it's a wider failure of artistic and people-to-people collaboration. And friend Vladimir Posner has said so many times, why aren't there more collaborative TV and arts and sporting ventures? Because when Russia hosted the World Cup, the people connection was fabulous, as it was back in the 90s in most of the space bridge programs. It was inspirational, and I think there was a real appetite for getting to know each other better and appreciating and building friendships. And the relationship we generated in Peace Child were incredibly warm, and as you can see, continue to this day. I count my Russian friends as some of the people I'm closest to in the world, but it's rediscovering that warmth, that human connection, that sense of a shared objective, which I would hope that you could inject into your space bridge program, because we do have so many shared priorities, not least ending the coronavirus and solving, the problem of preparing for future pandemics, avoiding nuclear war, combating climate change, because most of the European scientists that I'm talking to about climate change issues are not aware of the massive problem of methane releases in Siberia, or the plans that some of my friends at the Russian Academy of Sciences are developing to do capture of the methane gas and actually use it for fuel. And these are initiatives that require, intense scientific collaboration, and we should really be promoting that. And my fondest memory of being in Moscow in the 1980s was having breakfast with a horse veterinary surgeon who had meetings set up all over Russia with other horse vets, and there was another guy who was an eye surgeon, and the eye surgeon from America had the best relationships with eye surgeons in Russia. And those people-to-people connections, which we obviously created between the children, they wound a sort of rope of friendship and connection between our two countries that I feel today is almost completely absent. So, it's not a matter of technology anymore. It's a matter of human appetite for building those bridges, weaving that rope again, and making it, the strongest possible rope in the world. And I wonder what your thoughts are about that, and how your program speaks to that global imperative.
Right. Well, I very much agree that this is human-to-human connection, which is lost completely. And right now, with all the technology at the fingertips, somehow it doesn't make any easier. We're still completely in bubbles, and not only Russia, America, but overall any groups which are in conflict or polarized. There is something lost at the core of people being really interested in one another. Somehow people are okay to be in oppositions. There is some comfort about that. that's and also living in the States and not only being Russian but looking at all the racial issues and all red and blue issues and so on. There is just, again, you're in some kind of a box, and there is some comfort about that. So you can look at other people as the other, and there is very little interest to really create the bridge. And I think that in the arts right now, even in the theater, when there is that bridge, it's so straightforward, heavy-handed, political, that it still does not allow the form of that and expression, that it still does not allow for empathy and for people to connect to one another or be interested in one another. And I see exactly the same in relationships between Russia and America now. It feels like with all the Facebook, all the media, like Americans already made up their minds about Russia and they really don't have any interest to explore. So this is the big problem and the big conflict which I see. So to me, the space reaches really human-to-human connection. So in a way, in the story, in the content, in the form, in the way I would like to work with the audience and cast the audience in a way, this is my number one goal and priority. So it's not necessarily about Samantha or any other activist, and it's not only about Russia and America, but it's about us as audience, as people, not masses, but people, to really create interest and connection. That is to go beyond the binaries and all intellectual history which we have, and be interested in one another and create a generative dialogue and imagine things with one another. And that's in a way where the idea of, if we have a child activist help us to create the generative dialogue, and if we can assist these children in imagining their future, as the audience, as people who come to the theater. And this project doesn't only have to be a theater performance, there could be many steps in the way. So that is the goal. My husband actually just showed up, so you will have to talk to one more Dutchman today. Connections.
That's good.
Hello.
Hi. I'm David. Your name is?
My name is Thijs.
Thijs.
Yes.
Good to meet you.
It's easier to pronounce than it is to spell.
Yeah. Which part of Holland were you from?
Before I came to New York, I lived in Amsterdam, but nobody is from Amsterdam.
Nobody. Because we lived in Hilversum for 3 years.
That's where he's from.
Are you serious? My
No,
parents live in
serious.
Hilversum. I mean, I would have said I am from Hilversum. This is where my family is from, where they were born. Where did you live? What street?
Soestdijk Stratford.
No.
That's your street to pass.
No, I didn't live on the Soestdijkerstraatweg. The Soestdijkerstraatweg is a nice, prestigious street. You were very comfortable.
Yeah, we were very comfortable there. We had our office in Schravenlandersweg, if you know that.
That I don't know, but I know Soestdijkerstraatweg.
You must know. It's a small village out towards Lunen. Lunen is on the back.
I know Schravenland. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, it's Schravenlandersweg. It's the street that leads to Schravenland.
My aunt lives in Schravenland. No, that's a beautiful part of the country,
It is a beautiful country. Irina is having a lovely conversation with people who run an organization called Masterpiece, and they're based in Utrecht.
Uh-huh.
And he had a beautiful office right in the center of Utrecht, looking over the Weg. So it was, he'd just been on a sailing trip up to the Friesland Islands, which is, I think, my favorite part of Holland.
Yes, especially can you pronounce Schiermonnikoog?
I don't even try. No, I have enough difficulty with Schiphol. So. No, I never learned your beautiful language. I lived there 3 years, and when you go to the market and you buy meat from a butcher who speaks back to you in English that's better than mine, you give up on the language.
Yes.
But anyway, nice to meet you. You're a scientist. You What's your research field, though?
I work in medicine, in the discovery of novel therapeutics. I'm a consultant, so my specialty is in the applications of computers in drug discovery.
Ah, right.
So I predict things. I run simulations for people.
Modeling, yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
That's correct.
Okay, well, Irina, let me tell you what we're doing right now in Peace Child. And I don't know that it'll have any connection to exactly what you're doing. And I also want to make it very clear, I haven't run Peace Child now for 6 years. It's being run by a woman called Adriana Polio. And it's focused on the thing that Peace Child was doing at the end of my time there, which is youth job creation. So we're basically trying to end poverty through creating jobs in the poorest parts of West Africa. And that's what Peace Child has morphed into from starting life as a musical play. So it's been a very weird and odd journey, but I'm still working with his brother David1 and arts project, and as I mentioned, Stas Naumann is doing a Peace Child in Moscow as soon as the theaters reopen, and his new version is called Strike, and he's working with the Russian Academy of Sciences on debating the climate change issue as it relates to Russia, which is pretty interesting subject for all of us. But our main work that I'm doing is relating to another great New York institution, the United Nations, and its 75th anniversary this year, which, because of the state of the world, it's decided not to celebrate. And because of the absolute paralysis that governments have put it into, it's having a global conversation with we the peoples to discuss what the people's priorities are going forward. And basically the Secretary General is going to give a political statement on Peace Day, which is the 21st of September, of the results of that conversation with we the peoples, and setting new priorities for what we hope will be his second term, which he's going to launch in London in January for the 75th anniversary of the opening of the first UN General Assembly, which was here in London at the Central Hall, Westminster, in 1945. So that's what we're working towards, January the 10th, 2021, the 75th anniversary. But on the road, I'm doing a lot of intergenerational dialogues, bringing together young people with experts, politicians, to talk about what kind of UN we need for the next 75 years. And the big part of that is that they feel that there should be a digital UN now that belongs to you, we the peoples, that can act as a brake on lunatic governments that seem determined to push humanity over the cliff edge towards suicide, either through climate change or bad preparations for pandemics, or not arresting the threat of nuclear war, and basically sucking the planet dry for the resources. Spoliation of soils is a big issue that we're looking at, because that really threatens food security for all of us. And so these are the issues that we're looking at, and we're doing a big event on October the 24th, UN Day, which is the day the UN Charter was ratified by the first 50 member states. And that'll be a worldwide event in Moscow and San Francisco. But again, if there is any component of that you'd be interested in, I'd welcome the participation of either of you in that, because it's an opportunity to show that globally we the peoples are determined to fight back and not allow the Bolsonaros of this world to destroy the Amazon rainforest, or, the Chinese to bury the causes of the pandemic and pretend it never was nobody's fault, because that's what we need the United Nations to have the power and the guts to do. And yes, it's a paralyzed bureaucracy that pisses me off every time I go there, but it needs a monumental kick up the butt and support to get the job done, because there are some very, very good people working in the UN, and they just feel, hogtied by bureaucratic procedures that don't allow them to do anything.
Yeah.
So that's what we're doing. The other thing that I just want to mention to you is that you said you were talking about setting up a non-profit. And Ishmael has a 501c3, which I've inherited. It was in Hawaii, but we're now moving it to wherever it needs to go. And I don't need it. So if it would be helpful for you to have a ready-made 501c3, I can gift that to you. As far as I know, it's up to date with the IRS.
Amazing.
We just need to fill a Form 828. This with the CEO of Peace Child, that either she or I would like to be on the board of that, just in case in the future we want to do something in America.
Absolutely.
But if it would be useful to you.
It would be very useful, because I just started. I don't know what I can do for you. I can send you some bagels from New York. Which I don't. But yeah, that would be...
I think working with the UN, it's almost inevitable that we shall want to do some projects, but I would love you to have it, because I think you can use it.
Absolutely.
I didn't know they were transferable. I didn't know they were transferable 501c3s.
Absolutely, yeah. You can change the name. You can... the board of directors from the Hawaii group have totally resigned. And so I have it, and it's been gifted to me.
That's amazing. So we'd have to change the articles of incorporation and the board members, and then we're good to go. Is that what you're saying?
Pretty much. You just have to provide an address.
Wonderful.
That's remarkable.
Thank you. And I would
it's
love...
a Form 8228. Which of you should I deal with on that? Because I can send you the paperwork. Well, who knows American legal?
I'm an American.
Neither of us have ever done this before, but both of us are sane thinkers. But Irina's strengths are in the creative sphere, and I am a better administrator. So I have taken it upon myself to incorporate the company. But in all these correspondences, I think Irina would like to know what's going on. She will be the artistic director
I'll
of the
just
company.
copy both of you, but it's the Form 8228 that you have to fill out with an address and with a board of directors.
Okay.
And, you seem like reasonable people, so as long as you're not going to be trafficking drugs or anything. But that's why, if it's okay, like to be on the board of directors.
Absolutely.
We have absolutely no use for 501c3 at the moment. But maybe in the future we'll want to do something with the UN in New York, and we could collaborate on it. And it would just be another project of this organization that you have.
So irrespective of the 501c3, we would love to have you or Adriana on the board. I think that goes without saying.
Yeah.
Well, that's very sweet of you. Anyway, Irina, I have told you now what Peace Child's doing. We have all this music, if you've looked at our website. We also have Peace Train, the Cat Stevens song, which is 50 years old this year. But that's one little element in the Peace Child hopper of stuff that we can share with you. Wonderful. But I think what I'd like to feel is that, given our shared interest in global issues and what we used to have as our mission statement, which is harnessing the arts in the service of peace, if you know this English word. Harness, which you put on a horse, yeah? Harnessing the arts in service of peace, I think it's what you're doing. I really do. And I feel that coincidence of interest should get some collaboration at some level, but I don't know what that collaboration might be. You seem to have all the skills in your head, actually, Irina. If you're designer, actor, director, scriptwriter.
I have many skills, but it's not about my skills. There are a couple things which I'm thinking about with Peace Child, more your organization than the musical, is developing the content, which I think is very similar to the way you did. I'm very interested to work with children, or like with organizations like yours or Spark, to allow children create, co-write and be co-authors of the script, and do it through the series of workshops. As I said, I lead, visual driven workshops for people to create work together rather than just a writing workshops. So that's something, if there is interest to collaborate on that and help me engage children from different parts of the world. Again, this is not only about, Samantha Smith. It's very important to me. And it's not only about 1980s, and therefore it's not only about Russia and America. The seed is in there because I was there when she came, and when Katya Lechova was sent back to America, there was competition in my school. We all wanted to go. So I'm very